I almost missed the subject line tucked between quarterly reports and a coupon from the grocery store. Harper Family Summer Retreat, final head count. I opened it out of habit. My name wasn't there, again. No surprise, but the familiar sting still pricked. I closed the message and leaned back, letting the midday light of Santa Barbara roll across my apartment's pale walls. Waves hissed outside, as if the Pacific were whispering, "They've done it again, M." Last year I had sent hand-picked gifts ahead of the reunion, locally roasted coffee for Mom, a silk scarf for Aunt Ruth, a Lego kit for Madison's twins. The package arrived, the silence afterward was louder than any thank you card could have been. This spring, they hadn't even bothered to pretend I was on the guest list. There are snubs that bruise quickly and fade, and then there are quiet excisions that settle deep, the way salt settles into driftwood. Mine was the latter. I tried to ground myself in the ordinary, clicked through spreadsheets, scheduled a call with a client in Chicago, reminded myself I was good at my work, strategic planning for a tech firm that valued my calm precision. My desk sat tidy, blue-gray coaster, fountain pen Dad gave me at college graduation, and, just beyond the monitor, the small turquoise shell he'd pressed into my palm the summer I turned 9. Dad had said, "The ocean doesn't shout, it returns, stronger each time." He'd been gone 7 years, yet his voice lived in that shell. A notification chimed. Madison had posted to social media. Against my better judgment, I clicked. There she was, sunlit and self-assured, captioned family planning session. Can't wait for June. Everyone, Mom, Uncle Greg, Cousin Zoe, crowded behind her at some wine bar, heads tipped together like a single happy hydrangea. I scrolled, half searching for evidence of myself, an accidental reflection in a window, my name tagged by mistake. Nothing. My thumb hovered over the heart icon, then backed away. I locked the phone and listened to my apartment's hush. Mom's voicemail blinked on my screen from earlier that morning. She'd left a chipper 60-second update about a neighbor's new puppy, never once mentioning the reunion. At the end she said, "Call when you're free, sweetheart," in that airy tone that pretended everything between us was still whole cloth. I didn't press play. Instead, I opened my work inbox, wrote a concise project brief, pressed send. I kept typing, anything to occupy the ache. Yet the more I typed, the heavier the room grew. A corner office view can't compete with the empty space where family ought to sit. I rose, stretched, wandered to the kitchenette. The kettle hissed, I poured green tea and let the steam fog the window that faced the sea. Below, a pair of tourists walked the shoreline barefoot, laughing as gulls circled. I envied their uncomplicated footprints. Back at my desk, the shell awaited. I rolled it between my fingers, its ridges smooth from years of handling. I remembered Dad rinsing it and telling me the trick to hearing the tide inside. I placed it to my ear, nothing but distant traffic and my own breath, but the memory swelled warmer than sound. The cursor blinked on an empty document. I considered drafting a message to Mom, "Hey, saw the retreat plans. Did the invite get lost? Hope you're well." The words tasted false. Last year I'd tried that route, she'd replied hours later with a brief, "Oh, I thought Madison added you." Must have slipped her mind. Entire relationships shouldn't hinge on someone's forgetfulness. Outside, afternoon brightened to soft gold. I closed the email window, exhaled, and whispered, "No more." It wasn't defiance, exactly, it felt like setting down a weight I'd carried long after the straps had cut skin. I opened a clean browser tab. Not sure why, maybe muscle memory from years of do-it-yourself problem solving. I typed Harper Beach House Cambria and hit search. Listings floated up, real estate blue and white. Second result, charming oceanfront cottage, price reduced, motivated seller. I clicked. Photos unfolded. The porch swing Dad hung crooked on purpose so it would face the sunset, the sand-stained cedar shutters, the clamshell driveway where we chalked hopscotch while Mom mixed lemonade. My pulse tripped. For sale. List date, 13 days ago. Seller, Harper Legacy LLC. Madison's handiwork, she loved tidy acronyms. There'd been no group text, no courtesy call, just a quiet severing. They weren't just gathering without me, they were offloading the last place Dad and I still shared. Something inside me settled and shifted, like sand finding its level. I clicked through every photo, cataloging updates, new countertops, a soulless stainless steel fridge where our dented avocado green one had stood, but the banister still held the nick where I'd carved my initials and blamed Zoe. A realtor headshot beamed from the sidebar, same agent who'd sold Grandma's condo after the stroke. Below the slideshow sat a small gray button, receive instant alerts for this property. My finger hovered. I clicked. A pop-up asked for an email. I typed mine before I could think twice. Tabs multiplied, county tax site, property records, maps. The kettle clicked off, long forgotten. Outside, the sun tilted, streaking my office walls apricot. An ocean breeze nudged the balcony door and, somewhere, a gull cried with comic insistence. I leaned back, shell still in hand. Dad's voice, "The ocean doesn't shout," floated up again. Family could erase a name from an email chain, but they couldn't erase the steadier rhythm pulsing in my chest. I closed all tabs but the listing and reread the price, the dotted line under motivated. My reflection in the laptop glass looked calm, almost curious, as though I were considering a pair of shoes, not a life's anchor. I traced the shell spiral with my thumb. Sometimes a person spends years trying to squeeze into a room only to realize the door opens the other way. My work phone buzzed, meeting reminder at 9 tomorrow. I dismissed it. Then, without fireworks or anyone to witness, I opened a fresh note and typed 3 lines. Call realtor, data. Ask Tracy Ree, trust clause. Stop asking for a seat, build the table. I saved the note. Evening bled into indigo. Lamps clicked on along the boardwalk. I rose, closed the balcony door, and rinsed my teacup. Habit made me reach for my phone, ready to send Madison a breezy "saw the listing, want to chat?" I set the phone down instead. Silence can wound, yes, but silence can also shelter growth, the way soil hides a seed. Before shutting down the computer, I took one last look at the listing page. In the sidebar, a flashing tag caught my eye, price drops, be the first to know. Beneath it, almost hidden, another link read owner open to direct offers. I felt something steady click into place, the small, decisive sound a lock makes when it turns for the rightful key. I breathed out, refreshed the page, and let the moment settle, cool, like evening mist on sun-warmed skin. Tomorrow would bring phone calls and paperwork, maybe storms. But tonight belonged to the hush before the tide returns. My family's beach house was on the market, and no one thought to tell me. Dad's voice drifted up from memory the instant I reread the listing. Don't let them shrink your world, Em. He used to say that while coaxing me beyond titipools, urging me to see the vast beneath the surface slick. At my desk, I drew a calming breath and opened a new browser tab, ready to wade deeper. The agent's name, Sherry Langley, Coastal Dream Realty, rang a bell. I zoomed in on the headshot, same tidy blonde bob, same coral lipstick from Grandma's property sale. Sherry had hugged Mom in the driveway that day, murmuring such a relief to handle things smoothly. I remembered standing off to the side, pretending the for sale sign wasn't blocking my view of the porch swing. Now, from my 12th floor office, I studied Sherry's smiling photo as if it belonged to a suspect. Outside, gulls looped lazy circles above the harbor. Inside, I began compiling questions. Why 13 days on market with no family announcement? Why the reduced price? And why an LLC instead of our last name? I punched Tracy's number before I could rehearse an opening line. We'd met freshman year. She chose pre-law, I chose economics. 20 minutes into orientation, she'd talked me out of dropping calc. She picks up in 2 rings. Harper. Your timing is spooky. I was just cursing a boilerplate clause. Keys clacked in the background. I need your legal brain, I said, trying for casual and landing nearer to cracked porcelain. The Cambria house is listed. No heads up. Silence, then a low whistle. They're selling without telling you? Apparently, I said, forwarding her the link. Can you dig around? See if the trust papers give me any standing? Send me everything you have, Dad's will, title docs, whatever's handy. I'll queue it behind my exciting caseload of zoning disputes. Her tone lightened the air. Still, my fingers trembled as I gathered PDFs from an old estate folder, last opened the week after Dad's funeral. While the files uploaded, I clicked through the photo gallery. Sunrise on weathered shingles, the old swing still crooked. A second later the image blurred, replaced by a fresh memory, summer of 2019, me jiggling the spare key loose from its familiar nook only to discover an empty spiderweb. Madison inside had waved from the kitchen, mouthing break-in, then flicked the deadbolt with a too bright smile. That weekend, I slept in a motel 2 miles inland and told myself distance built perspective. My computer dinged, email from Sherry, startlingly prompt. Hi Emily. Thanks for your interest. Yes, the property is available. Currently in escrow review, details confidential. Best. Sherry. Escrow review felt like a polite hand pushing me off screen. I replied anyway, requesting disclosure packets as family member and potential buyer. Her out-of-office auto-reply bounced back instantly, convenient. A fresh message from Tracy slid into view. Got the docs. Give me a few. Also, hydrate. You sound thin on oxygen. I almost laughed. I did stand to refill my water bottle, and the act steadied me. On the kitchenette shelf sat a bowl of lemons I'd meant to turn into herbal syrup. I squeezed one into my glass, savoring the scent, bright, real, something I could still claim. Landing back at my chair, I opened Dad's digitized trust and scrolled lines I'd skimmed once in grief-blurred haste. Legalese marched down the page, but I paused on a subheading Tracy had highlighted in yellow. Secondary beneficiary provision, property 227, Seaside Drive. The clause read dense as pound cake, yet a clear sentence leaped out. In the event primary beneficiaries fail to maintain taxes, insurance, or occupancy for a period exceeding 24 consecutive months, full claim transfers to secondary beneficiary, Emily Rose Harper. I stared until letters fuzzed. Taxes, insurance, occupancy. Had they let the house sit half-empty, bills lapsed while debating tile colors? Dad must have built that failsafe like a lighthouse he knew I'd one day need. My phone buzzed, Tracy again, voice this time. Just so you hear it from me, she said, almost giddy, you have a real shot. County shows lapsed insurance last quarter, property taxes 2 months delinquent. If those gaps line up with the clause, you can file for title reassignment. Wind rushed through me as though every door in the office had opened at once. That sounds enormous. It is, she replied, then softened. But big doesn't mean bad. We start with a title search and a quiet notice. Nothing theatrical. I swiveled toward the window. The horizon drew a crisp cobalt line between sea and late spring sky. You saying I could own it? Outright? I'm saying you have leverage, she said. Use it how you want. Maybe that means owning. Maybe it means making them sit at the table for once without trimming your seat. Leverage. The word felt less like a weapon and more like a doorstop, small, firm, preventing the familiar slam. When our call ended, I sat with Dad's shell pressed to my palm. I remembered him teaching me how to skip stones, how water accepts the ones who commit and swallows the ones who hesitate. That afternoon he'd told me, trust yourself to cross the surface, Momentum is mercy. Was momentum what I was feeling now, a quiet forward pull stronger than disappointment? Back on the listing page, I hovered over the Contact Agent Directly button. I imagined Mom arranging hydrangea centerpieces for a reunion brunch that would never consider my RSVP. I pictured Madison's crisp laugh, Aunt Ruth's casserole, the empty space where my name tag used to sit. A breeze fluttered the balcony curtain, carrying briny air. I clicked the button and began drafting a short, professional query requesting a private showing to assess personal interests. My tone surprised me, steady, cordial, not even a tremor between syllables. Before hitting send, I paused, considering what ownership meant beyond furniture and keys. It meant recovering Dad's footprints, repainting over years of erasure, deciding whether forgiveness needed 4 walls to echo in. It meant choosing presence over apology. I pressed send. The screen glowed gentle in the gathering dusk. Somewhere below, a fishing boat's horn sounded, a low, reassuring note wandering into the bay. I closed my eyes long enough to feel its vibration in my chest. They can shrink the guest list, I thought, opening my eyes, but the shoreline's still wide enough for me. And perhaps, with the right leverage, so was the deed. I reached for a clean notepad and wrote 2 columns, facts and feelings. Under facts I listed, trust clause effective, taxes lapsed, agent evasive, Tracy engaged. Under feelings, just one word formed, ready. Outside, the sky folded into lavender. Emails could wait until morning, decisions, however, had already begun to grow roots. I shut the laptop, tucked Dad's shell into my pocket, and let the evening carry me forward, toward whatever owning a memory might require. A silver line of moonlight cut across my living room floor, and for the first time in years I felt a spark of hope bright enough to chase the shadows into the corners. The apartment was hushed except for gulls drifting somewhere beyond the balcony and the occasional ping of an email landing in my inbox. Dad's turquoise shell lay beside my trackpad, glossy as wet paint, its spiral catching the glow from my desk lamp. I touched it, a private handshake with the man who taught me that objects can hold courage the way tidipools hold light. Tracy sat across from me in sweatpants and an oversized Bruins hoodie, laptop balanced on her knees. She'd shown up after dinner with a bottle of ginger beer and a grin that said let's get to work. Okay, she announced, tapping the screen. I dug deeper into county records. Taxes lapsed 8 months out of the last 24, insurance expired twice and wasn't renewed for 60 days, and occupancy is a joke. The place is basically an Airbnb with family photos on the walls. So the clause triggers? My voice felt small in the room. Not automatically. She scrolled, highlighted language Dad had tucked like pearls in seaweed. But you have standing to pursue title reassignment. Step 1 is filing notice to trustees. Step 2, motion for transfer and probate. It's paperwork, not a knife fight. A laugh escaped me, thin, surprised. Paperwork I can handle. Tracy slugged her ginger beer. Thought so. You're the only person I know who color codes cloud folders. She handed me a slim manila envelope. These are the initial forms. Sign, and I'll courier them in the morning. I placed the shell on top of the envelope, feeling the weight of both. Before I sign anything, I need facts, dates, lapses, proof that they ignored Dad's maintenance schedule. Already started compiling. She pointed to a folder on my desktop labeled Cambria Audit. Inside sat PDFs of utility shutoff notices, a screenshot of Mom's Facebook post lamenting rising costs 2 summers ago, and a red flag email from Madison to the property manager. We'll skip insurance renewal until we decide what to do. Their negligence, stamped in pixels. I exhaled through pursed lips, as though cooling tea that was really anger. They always said the house was too much logistics for me to understand. Tracy shrugged. You understand just fine. While she drafted a summary letter, I opened the cedar-boxed photo albums Mom had returned to me after the funeral. Dust motes lifted like fireflies when I cracked the cover. There we were, Dad and I, barefoot on the porch rail, holding up freshly painted seashells like trophies. Madison's headband matched the sunset. Mom's smile was perfect but distant, behind the camera, always directing the shot. Page after page of sunburned summers, then fewer of me as the years marched on. The last photo that included my face dated 2015, after that, frames were suspiciously full without me. At the back pocket I found a folded letter in Dad's hand. Remember, making things last means tending what others forget. A tremor ran through me, equal parts ache and ignition. My phone buzzed, Madison's name. Group chat updated. The preview bubble showed a gif of fireworks followed by a string of champagne emojis. I muted the thread without opening it. Another buzz, Mom this time. Call when you're free, dear. No mention of listings, taxes, or missing daughters. I slid the phone face down. Tracy closed her laptop. All right. Lawyer mode off. Friend mode on. She leaned forward, elbows on knees. You sure you want this? Title battles can get messy even when they're civil. I studied the shell, its ocean-worn ridges mirroring the whorls of my fingerprint. I don't know what I want beyond fairness. Maybe owning the house isn't even the point. Maybe it's proving I was never disposable. Well, she said, fairness has to live somewhere. Might as well be in a house with a porch swing. We shared a quiet chuckle that felt like a warm quilt. She stood, stretched. Sleep on it. If you wake up tomorrow still ready, sign. If not, we shred and order pizza. After she left, the apartment settled back into late-night stillness. I dimmed the overhead light, leaving only the lamp. Documents glowed on the desk, the first stepping stones across a river I'd avoided for years. I opened my email and crafted a concise message to Sherry Langley requesting a formal disclosure packet and suggesting a private conversation regarding familial interest. I scheduled it to send at 8:05 a.m., businesslike, unemotional. Next I sifted through archived emails from Mom, polite updates about Rose's blooming, a niece's recital, Madison's latest promotion. None mentioned overdue taxes. Yet I found receipts, my receipts, showing flights taken on short notice whenever Dad's health dipped, cash transfers to cover property repairs. These, too, went into the evidence folder. The shell's curve nestled under my thumb as I imported a final batch of files. A memory surfaced, Dad and me alone in the beach house kitchen a month before his stroke. He'd fixed a wobbling stool while I discussed grad school loans. Hammer paused midair, he said, things built to last need 2 kinds of nails, care and backup. I'd laughed, not grasping the lesson tucked between words. Tonight it landed. I printed the notice of intent Tracy drafted, slid it across the desk, and found a pen. My hand hesitated. With this stroke I wasn't just calling their bluff, I was redrawing the circle they'd pushed me out of. Ink met paper in a steady line, Emily Rose Harper. A signature both ordinary and seismic. The lamplight flickered as the building's HVAC kicked on, a gentle exhale. I sat back, heart thumping like distant surf. Dad's shell gleamed approval, or perhaps the apartment's light simply caught its surface at the right forgiving angle. I placed the signed notice into the manila envelope and sealed it. The tape made a sound like fabric tearing, and for an instant I imagined old family narratives ripping free. Envelope addressed, I powered down the laptop. Night pressed against the glass. Somewhere, a freighter horned its slow passage. I turned the shell over once more, then set it atop the envelope, guardian of a promise made to myself. Can I go through with this? The question seeped in as I brushed my teeth, followed me into bed, coiled beside sleepless thoughts, deposit fees, legal pushback, Mom's wounded sigh, Madison's icy ring of laughter. Could I bear being painted the villain for defending what should have been shared? I lay staring at the ceiling where city lights drew shifting watermarks. Hope fluttered like a candle, small but alive. Fear prowled the edges, testing windows. Somewhere between them, resolve found a seat. Before sleep finally claimed me, I whispered into the dark, if they fight, I'll stand. The words felt fragile, yet they settled deeper than doubt, like seeds ready for first rain. And the shell on my desk, silent, seaborn witness, kept watch until dawn. Owning the house would mean more than keys, it would rewrite every caption under every family photo, including the one that had cut me out years ago. That thought sat heavy in my mouth as Tracy and I rode the glass elevator to her downtown office, the city glittering through the walls like confetti on a snow globe. Tracy balanced a cardboard tray of coffees. Double shot vanilla for courage, she said, nudging my cup toward me with her elbow. We sign, we file, we breathe. Then we wait, I murmured. The elevator pinged. Mahogany doors swallowed us into a quiet corridor lined with framed permits and glossy diplomas. In Tracy's suite, a paralegal slid a stack of documents across a conference table already set with black pens and yellow flags. My name, printed in bold, topped each page, Emily Rose Harper, secondary beneficiary. Seeing it there felt surreal, as though I'd borrowed someone else's future. Tracy cleared her throat. First up, the petition for title reassignment. Then a consent to sale waiver in case we flip it later. Finally, authorization for escrow to release funds. Easy. Easy was relative. Will Mom or Madison get a notification? Only after the county recorder stamps the transfer. She tapped her pen. By then, it's fact, not discussion. Fact, not discussion. Dad used to say that about sunrise tides, they come whether or not anyone's ready. I signed where the sticky tabs told me, my hand steady until the final swoop of my last name. With each stroke, the old photo where I'd been cropped out faded a shade, first the sting, then the hollow, then, almost, indifference. Paperwork done, Tracy scanned the pages into the system. While she worked, I wandered to the window that overlooked State Street. Tourists ambled below with ice cream cones, blissfully unaware of family inheritances and trust clauses. My reflection hovered over them, eyes bright, shoulders squared, someone nearly unrecognizable to the girl who used to hover at the edges of group shots. Back at my apartment that evening, the shell sat under my desk lamp like a lighthouse. The inbox pinged, Sherry Langley, update on 227, Seaside Drive. Hi Emily. Happy to report the seller has accepted your terms, escrow is set for 3 business days. No competing offers have surfaced. Congratulations. I read it twice, heart hammering. No contest so far meant Madison and Mom hadn't noticed, or chose silence as strategy. Either possibility chilled me. I called Tracy. It's proceeding. Sherry sounds cheerful. She's picturing her commission, Tracy said, laughter threading through fatigue. We'll wire funds from your trust account tomorrow. Once escrow closes, the deed's yours. I thanked her, but curiosity landed next. Why isn't anyone stopping this? Madison loved control the way sailboats love wind. Mom hated surprises unless she orchestrated them. Were they distracted? Confident I'd back down? Or had Dad's claws outmaneuvered even their certainty? A notification flashed, a memory prompt from a photo app, 10 years ago today. I opened it. The screen filled with a 4th of July reunion shot, picnic tables under string lights, everyone mid-laugh. I remembered crouching to tie a child's shoe just as Madison snapped the photo, only my elbow made the final crop. In the corner stood Dad, lifting his glass toward me out of frame, like he knew I'd need that silent toast later. I set the phone face down, inhaled slow. Dust motes danced in the lamplight, weightless as forgiveness. Something inside me loosened. The next morning, Tracy forwarded a wire confirmation. My stomach flipped when I saw the number, decades of careful saving transferred in one bold line. Beneath it, she'd typed, "Welcome home, Harper." Minutes later Sherry called, her voice champagne bright. "Emily, escrow closed without a hiccup. Congratulations, officially." A tremor traveled through my knees. "Thank you," I managed. I almost added, "Please keep this discreet, but why should I hide?" Instead I asked for the digital deed. Sherry sent it before we hung up. I opened the PDF. There, stamped by the county recorder, was my name beside grantee. Under legal description lay coordinates that had framed every summer breeze of my childhood. I pressed my fingertip to the screen, half expecting to feel sand. Dad's last conversation with me on that porch came rushing back. He'd run a thumb over the weathered railing, eyes crinkling. "Promise me, Em, you won't let memories sit unattended. Make them last by living in them." That day I'd nodded, not fully understanding. Today, the promise clicked into its final notch. Hope surged, chased instantly by fear. Would Madison accuse me of opportunism? Would Mom cry betrayal? Or worse, would they shrug, relieved to wash their hands of the place and me? I closed the laptop, heart galloping. Action is a tonic, Dad used to say. I opened the resort's booking portal, same one Madison always used to organize reunions. Under guest name I typed Ms. Emily Harper. Check-in, the Friday before the retreat. Room preference, master suite. Special notes, please place a bottle of Perrier Jouet on ice. Guest prefers firm pillows, cotton sheets, full privacy. My finger hovered, the cursor blinking like held breath. Owning the deed was one kind of bold, stepping into the space they claimed as theirs was another. I thought of that cropped photograph, of how small I'd felt, half erased. Then I pictured placing that framed print back on the mantel with the missing piece restored. I hit reserve. The confirmation page bloomed, "Reservation complete, we look forward to your stay." I read it 3 times until the words steadied. Outside, late afternoon clouds drifted over the coast, edges glowing peach. I opened the balcony door, salt air swept in, lifting papers on my desk. The shell rocked, then settled, as if nodding approval. I squeezed it in my palm, felt its stubborn smoothness. Keys would be couriered in 48 hours. Ownership documents would arrive by certified mail. But the truer shift had already occurred someplace less tangible, inside the parts of me that once equated love with invitations and worth with seating charts. A gull wheeled overhead, crying its ragged note. Below, the shoreline stretched wide, accepting every wave that dared return. I whispered, just loud enough for the tide to borrow, "History starts over now." Yet as the sun tilted, a new worry unfurled, Once Madison saw the reservation, she'd know. Would she rally the family to fight? Would Mom plead tradition? Could I stand my ground against their combined silence? The spark of triumph dimmed into ember, glowing but unstable. I closed the door, pulled the shell to my ear. No ocean sound, only my heartbeat, rapid, alive. I set it back down gently, letting its curve catch the light. The key slid into the lock with a muted clunk that felt entirely new, yet everything beyond the threshold smelled achingly familiar: salt air, sun-warmed cedar, and the faint citrus polish Mom once swore by. The house felt different with my name on the deed, but the past still echoed in every corner, a chorus that hadn't rehearsed with me in years. I stepped onto the cool foyer tiles, suitcase wheels whispering behind. Dad's crooked porch swing bumped the railing outside, thumping a rhythm he'd called ocean applause. I closed the door and rested my palm against it, half expecting the wood to pulse with his heartbeat. Nothing but quiet. Lights were already on. Sherry's crew had been through for a last-minute inspection, so I began my old ritual in reverse. In childhood, Dad and I had shut down the house each night, room by room, so it would sleep easy. Now I turned lights off as I moved deeper, letting afternoon sun shoulder through shutter slats. Kitchen, hallway, den, click, 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 till only the living room glowed gold. On the mantel, the family photo collage remained, yet gaps yawned where frames used to sit. One missing space marched straight through 2012, the year Mom clucked her tongue over too much clutter and boxed up half the pictures. I traced the clean rectangle of dust, recalling the snapshot that once lived there, me and Dad balancing seashells on our foreheads, eyes crossed in comic concentration. Gone. The refrigerator door squeaked open. Someone had replaced the avocado green antique with stainless steel, but the inside light still dazzled like a stage. I nestled a bottle of Perrier Jouet on the middle shelf beside a lonely carton of half and half. Dad claimed that particular champagne tasted like the ocean when it decides to forgive. The silence was vast enough for wails. I opened the back door and stepped onto the deck. The view belonged to every summer memory I owned: ironwood tree leaning toward the surf, pelicans gliding low, sand bleeding into a silver horizon. Wind lifted my hair and blew through the dried-out chime Madison had hung, mass-produced shells that clacked like plastic spoons. I made a mental note to swap them for the homemade one waiting in my Santa Barbara closet. Inside again, I wandered upstairs. A new lock had been installed on the bedroom I once shared with Madison. Its brass gleamed, arrogant and unused. In the master suite, now my suite, a chipped enamel mug rested on the dresser, world's best Dad still legible beneath layers of glaze. I lifted it gently. A fissure split the rim. I pressed my thumb against it, imagining Dad's laugh snagging on that same flaw while Mom scolded him for refusing to replace junk. No junk here, only relics. My phone chimed. Tracy, one missed call. I rang back while opening windows to let sea breeze sweep stale air away. You in? She asked. Physically, yes. Emotionally, I'm in 3 time zones at once. She chuckled. First impressions? Strange. Like I borrowed a sweater that still smells like its owner. Proud, sad, vaguely disloyal, take your pick. Disloyal to whom? She asked softly. Good question. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Maybe to the 10-year-old who thought being invited was the prize. The prize, Tracy reminded, is self-respect wrapped in square footage. A beat of silence. Need me to drive up? I pictured her in that Bruins hoodie, legal pad in hand. Not yet. I'll call if the walls start talking. They already are, she replied. You're just translating. We hung up, and I set about exploring as if cataloging artifacts for a museum of almost lost things. The linen closet still smelled of lavender sachets Grandma stitched. Madison's boys had left a neon water blaster under the stairs. In the laundry room I found Dad's faded work shirt draped over the dryer, sleeves forever rolled. Downstairs again, I opened the guestbook drawer. The old ledger lay beneath a stack of blank cards. Its last entry, in Madison's cursive, read, "Thankful for family laughter, even in chaos." Dated 3 summers back. I fetched a brassy fountain pen Dad once kept near the phone, uncapped it, and wrote in careful strokes. June 2nd, 2023, Ms. Emily Harper, owner. Grateful for tides, patience, and second chances. Ink pooled then settled. My chest did the same. Clunk. Tires on gravel. I froze, pen still in hand. Through the wavy front window glass, an Audi eased up the drive, pearl white, Madison's signature. Her husband stepped out first, tugging luggage. 2 restless silhouettes bickered in the back seat. Madison emerged last, sunglasses perched like a verdict. Behind them, a rental SUV rolled in, Mom's pale hat visible above the dashboard. They were early, days early. A gull screeched overhead, and the porch swing knocked once, twice, like a judge calling court to order. My pulse drummed. I wiped ink from my finger, set the guest book on the entry table, and watched the family advance toward a front door that no longer recognized them. Outside, suitcases thumped onto the porch planks. Madison raised a hand to knock. I inhaled briny air, squared my shoulders, and reached for the handle from the other side. Madison crossed the threshold first, sunglasses still on, dragging a rose-gold suitcase that thudded over the foyer seam. Mom slipped in behind her, linen wide-leg pants brushing the floor like a peace flag someone forgot to raise. Family is forever, she used to sing whenever I borrowed frustration from thin air, unless you make trouble. Today her smile looked pressed, the kind of florist uses to close a wilted corsage. Eily? Madison's voice snagged halfway through my name. She blinked at the darkened house. I'd left only the entry sconce glowing, a small lighthouse in uncertain waters. Why are you here so early? I own the place now, I said quietly, the words resting on the air like lint she couldn't brush off. Uncle Greg stalled behind Mom, suitcase dangling midair. Aunt Ruth's straw tote tapped her calf. Cousin Zoe held her phone chest high, thumb hovering, poised to text, record, or vanish altogether. Madison laughed once, sharp, mirthless. You're kidding. Sherry said escrow wouldn't close for weeks. It closed yesterday. Her husband cleared his throat, as if to remind everyone that oxygen existed. Madison's sunglasses came off with surgical precision. She tucked one arm in her cardigan but left the other loose, half armor, half retreat. Mom stepped forward, palms open. Honey, if you needed a getaway, you could have asked. We would have arranged something. I needed more than a weekend pass, I said. I needed permanence. Silence settled, thick and velvety. From outside, waves folded over themselves, unsure which way to tumble. I heard Dad's porch swing creak, an old metronome counting heartbeats. Madison's gaze flicked to the guest book on the console table. She moved like someone checking a rumor, turned a single page, saw her own handwriting from summers past, then my fresh ink, Ms. Emily Harper, owner. When she shut the book, the click sounded louder than any shout could have. This is ridiculous, she said, voice low. Mom, explain to her. Mom offered a strained smile. Emily, sweetheart, you know group decisions take time. We just hadn't reached out yet. You listed the house, I reminded, under an LLC. No group chat, no call. Uncle Greg shifted, sensing his name was safe so far. Aunt Ruth pressed her lips thin, reapplying invisible lipstick. My phone buzzed. Tracy, need backup? I thumbed back standby and slid the phone into my pocket. Madison's cheeks flushed a delicate sunset that belied the steel in her tone. We were exploring options. Renovate or liquidate. It wasn't personal. It usually isn't, I answered. But consequences are. She opened her mouth, closed it, then pivoted to Mom. Mother? Mom's shoulders rose, fell, a sigh inside a sigh. Emily, families adapt. We thought. What did you think? My voice stayed soft, but the question made space like pulling a chair no one expected. That I wouldn't notice another year of silence? Or that I'd stay politely invisible while you erased the last place Dad and I shared? In the hallway, the antique clock chimed 6, each note lingering like a held breath. Zoe's phone screen dimmed, she swiped to keep it alive. Madison inhaled through her nose. Look, there's no need for drama. The reunion starts Friday. We can discuss ownership later, lawyers, paperwork. It is later, I said. And the paperwork's done. Her jaw flexed. Sherry never mentioned a transfer. I'll call her. Feel free, I replied. Titles recorded with the county. Trust clause executed. Taxes and insurance documented. My hand stayed by my side, but the folder of proof felt present, a quiet ally. Zoe whispered something to Aunt Ruth. Ruth shook her head, eyes glancing from me to the door as if measuring nearest exits. Uncle Greg cleared his throat, offering, maybe we should bring in the luggage? No one moved. Mom stepped closer, pearls trembling. Up the sneer, I could smell her signature geranium soap. Why would you do this? She asked, voice gentle, puzzled, almost wounded. The question carried years of unsent invitations, unasked check-ins, unnoticed absence. My answer came easier than expected. Because I was never really invited. The foyer walls held the words, passing them around until every family member had to meet them. Madison's eyes gleamed, but no tears fell. Mom's lips parted as if to refute, then pressed thin. Outside, tires crunched gravel. A white van slid into view beyond the sidelights, blue logo stenciled on the panel, Channel 7, Coastal Now. A cameraman swung out, hoisting a rig, a reporter adjusted her blazer, hair buffeted by ocean wind. Madison's head snapped toward the window. Is that news crew? I finished, pulse kicking. My phone buzzed again, another text from Tracy, saw local feed. They're here. Mom's fingers fluttered at her throat. Emily, please, not in front of strangers. Strangers, I echoed softly, watching the lens focus on the porch. Light from the setting sun flashed off the camera glass, filling the foyer with a split-second flare, like lightning preparing to name every silhouette. In the unease that followed, the old swing bumped the railing again, steady and unafraid. Some doors stay closed until the truth knocks louder than tradition ever could. The camera crew was already mic'd up before I could shut the door. A reporter in a blazer the color of wet sand smiled as though we'd been chatting for years. Behind her, the boom operator adjusted his pole, cables snaking across the porch boards Dad once stained himself. Emily Harper? She asked. Channel 7. Mind if we ask a few questions about the family property dispute? Dad's voice nudged from memory. The truth has legs, it'll walk itself out if you let it. Trouble was, truth liked a steady stroll, tabloids preferred sprinting. I inhaled briny air. Now isn't a good time. She angled the mic anyway. Sources say you exploited a loophole in your father's will to force relatives out of their generational home. Some are calling it inheritance betrayal. Madison, still on the porch, stiffened like a cat in rain. Mom hovered behind her, pearls unmoving. They wouldn't speak on record, of course not, but I watched Madison lean toward the reporter, lips barely moving. The mic caught only fragments: stress, declining health, manipulated. Off camera, Aunt Ruth dabbed imaginary tears, Cousin Zoe filmed everything on her phone, thumbs flying. I felt stories twisting themselves midair, choosing villains by wardrobe and timing. Mine was a denim jacket and yesterday's ponytail, easy to cast as careless. The reporter's smile thinned. Any comment on allegations you pressured your father during cognitive decline? My phone buzzed relentlessly, texts stacking like urgent files. Heard the news, is it true? From an old coworker, 3 question marks from my landlord, a single broken heart emoji from a college roommate I hadn't seen in a decade. I stepped back and closed the door, firm, not slammed. Inside, the foyer felt suddenly small, echoing with muffled questions through glass. I moved room to room, past the mantel stripped of photos, past the swing's shadow bobbing against the wall, trying to breathe. Ping. Tracy, TV spinning hard. You okay? Not sure yet, I typed. They're painting me as a predator in heels. You own sneakers, she replied. Release the receipts. Let truth stretch its legs. My thumb hovered. Evidence meant Dad's voice, the video we'd recorded on the back porch, his blanket tucked to his chin as he spoke about the house and about me. I wasn't sure I could bear hearing it, but rumor was already roaring, silence would only give it teeth. I climbed the narrow stairs to the office Dad once used for tackle boxes and tax forms. Dust motes floated, lazy and innocent, across the afternoon sun. I set the laptop on the desk, the old one I'd brought for familiarity, and scrolled through cloud folders. There, porch_conversation_final.mp4. I pressed play. Dad filled the screen, sea light flickering in his tired eyes. If the place ever sits neglected, he said, voice steady despite tremors, give it to Emily. She makes things last. He looked toward me, toward the lens, and smiled. It's not about fairness, honey. It's about memory. My own reflection filmed in the window now, older, stung but standing. Outside, camera shutter snapped. I paused the video on Dad's smile, his approval frozen like benediction. For a moment the swirl of headlines and whispers dimmed, leaving only his certainty. Ping. Tracy, need a lift? Or a bullhorn? I closed the player, opened a blank email. Addressed it to sarah.cho@coastalobserver.com, a journalist who once wrote a measured piece on elder care abuse and hadn't chased clicks to do it. Subject, full context on Harper property story. Hand steady, I typed. Hi Sarah. Sharing documents and a video clip that clarify my father's wishes. No embargo. Use what's true. Emily. I attached the video, the clause, the tax statements. Dad's words would walk now, and I would let them. Before hitting send, I glanced at the window. The reporter still waited on the porch, mic lowered, unsure what story she held. Madison paced behind her, phone pressed to ear, silhouette sharp against the coastal glare. I clicked send. The email whooshed off, small and calm, like a pebble tossed into a roaring tide. Sometimes, I remembered Dad saying, the ocean chisels rock grain by grain. Let it work. I didn't post a rebuttal, I sent the truth to someone who still believes in it. While the porch lights flickered under a rising moon, I sat at Dad's old desk, the house echoing with distant waves and the faint hum of a news segment replaying in the next room. Savannah's voice drifted from years ago. Let them talk. Just don't let them write your ending. I reread the email to investigative reporter Sarah Cho. 3 attachments, 1 line of text. This is what really happened. No defense, no adjectives, only evidence. Dad's video, the audio of Mom and Madison dismissing me, the timeline of unpaid taxes. I hit send and let the screen fade to black. The house settled with creaks I couldn't yet translate. On the coffee table, a half-full bottle of Pinot reflected the TV's glow. Channel 7 looped the earlier clip. Daughter uses loophole to seize family home. Their pundit panel chewed on half-truths like saltwater taffy. I muted the volume, unwilling to taste it again. My mind slid back to a day 3 months before Dad's stroke, Mom rearranging place settings for a photo, gently nudging mine out of frame so the pattern looked balanced. I'd laughed then, pretending it didn't matter. Now I felt the indentation of that empty spot as if it pressed my ribs. The laptop chimed. Sarah replied, received. Reviewing tonight. Thank you for trusting me. 2 minutes later, can I quote the video verbatim? Yes, I typed. Let his words breathe. Outside, the wind rattled the faux shell chime Madison had installed. Its tinny clack grated until I shut the window and leaned back, letting darkness pool around me. Above, beams groaned where Dad once stored fishing rods. I imagined his voice between the boards reminding me patience is muscle, not mood. I must have dozed in the desk chair because Tracy's text woke me at 4:17 a.m., story drops at dawn. Brace. My neck protested as I straightened, heartbeat stubbornly calm. The kettle whistled in the quiet kitchen while dawn smeared the horizon lilac. By 7, Sarah's article led the Coastal Observer homepage. Daughter executes safeguard clause father designed, a story of neglect, not greed. The tone was measured, the timeline detailed. Dad's video embedded near the top, him wrapped in a quilt, eyes clear, saying, "Give it to Emily. She makes things last." No dramatic score, just his steady cadence. I scrolled to the comments, braced for venom, but the first dozen surprised me. Looks like she honored her dad's wishes. Why didn't the family pay taxes? Sometimes quiet perseverance wins. I closed the page before hope skewed into vanity. My phone buzzed nonstop, ex-colleagues, distant cousins, even my landlord, this time with a thumbs-up emoji. Tracy called on her drag to court. Original outlet changed its headline to family dispute over trust clause. No insinuations. They're nervous. And Madison? Social feeds dormant. That's your clue. She paused at a red light. How do you feel? I glanced around the living room, dawn light softening every edge. Lighter. Like the floorboards finally leveled. Good. Rest. They're quiet, for now. She hung up with a promise to call after her hearing. I poured coffee and walked the hall, touching doorknobs, letting the present settle over the past like new paint. When I reached Dad's room, I hesitated. The door cracked open with a sigh, revealing sunlight spilling across the dresser where his chipped mug still sat. I whispered, "Your legs worked, Dad. Your truth walked." At 10, tires crunched outside. My stomach dipped, but it wasn't media. A courier in a navy jacket strode up the path, envelope in hand. I signed automatically and carried the document to the dining table. Superior Court of California, petition for injunctive relief. Filed by Madison Elaine Harper. I traced the raised seal. So the silence had been strategy after all. The house felt steady beneath my feet, yet my pulse ticked faster. I opened a blank folder on the laptop, labeling it litigation prep, and slipped the notice inside. Dad's shell sat beside the trackpad, its spiral implacable. My phone chimed once more. Tracy, saw docket alert. Will respond. You've got proof and precedent. Deep breath. I pressed the shell to my ear. No ocean, only my own breathing, slow, deliberate, unafraid. Madison wanted the story back on her terms. So be it. I had learned the tide's schedule and the sturdiness of truth on its own 2 feet. I closed the shell, straightened the papers, and let the coffee cool, preparing for the next swell. Let them talk, Savannah had said. And they would. But this time, they wouldn't write the ending without me. She didn't want the house. She wanted the story back, every polished anecdote where she played flawless hostess and I hovered somewhere just off stage. Tracy's conference room smelled of lemon oil and copier heat. My lawyer, Angela Patel, slid a yellow legal pad toward me. Opposing counsel will lean hard on estranged daughter. We counter with caregiving records, wire transfers, the video. Keep answers short. Madison's voice echoed in memory, this family only works when I keep it together. Translation, her version was the only acceptable draft. Now she'd filed to have my pages torn out. Angela walked us through procedure, first motions, witness lists, possible continuance. I tried to focus, but a framed diploma behind her kept tilting, just slightly, a picture that refused to stay level. Fitting. We crossed town to Tracy's apartment, spread documents across her dining table beneath a crooked pendant lamp. Tracy brewed cinnamon coffee and opened a folder labeled support logs, my airfare receipts, hospital parking stubs, bank statements showing monthly transfers to Dad's caretaker. Proof I hadn't vanished, I'd simply been unacknowledged. You sure you're ready to sit on the stand? Tracy asked. I'm tired of being footnotes, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of it. Evening slid toward indigo as we organized evidence tabs by year. At midnight we broke for takeout pho, steam fogging the windows while Tracy rehearsed potential questions. Her cat, an aloof tuxedo, watched us as though weighing credibility. Next morning, courthouse marble gleamed under harsh fluorescent light. Angela adjusted her blazer. Remember, brevity. We passed Madison's attorney, too tanned, too confident, reviewing talking points about vulnerable elder exploitation. I felt the label brush my skin, cold as chalk dust. Outside the hearing room, I noticed Mom seated beside Madison, spine rigid, pearls steady. She didn't look at me, but her hand rested on Madison's wrist, a silent seconding of the petition. They made a striking tableau, the matriarch and the chosen curator of family lore. Angela leaned close. We can keep you off the stand if you'd rather. I glanced at the heavy door, heard muted courtroom bustle beyond, shuffling papers, distant coughs. Dad's voice surfaced. The truth walks, but sometimes it needs a clear voice to follow. My voice. I'll testify, I said. A bailiff opened the door. The judge's clerk called the case, Harper versus Harper, petition to enjoin title transfer. We stepped inside. Madison was already seated at counsel table, jaw set, eyes icy but bright, as though litigation were just another networking event. Mom's posture echoed hers. Uncle Greg and Aunt Ruth occupied the second row, faces polite, curious, detached, as if attending a matinee out of town. I took my place behind Angela, heartbeat steady, fingers tracing the edge of Dad's shell tucked in my pocket. I could almost feel its spiral urging forward momentum. The judge entered, silver hair, lined face that suggested patience with neither theatrics nor sentiment. Gavels aren't loud, I realized, rooms simply listen when they fall. Angela whispered, stay calm. Truth's on deck. I exhaled, met Madison's stare across polished oak, and let the tide inside me rise until it found words. This hearing wouldn't rewrite family history, but it would record my paragraph in the court reporter's transcript, indelible, archived, impossible to crop out. Courtrooms smell like old wood and broken promises. The scent met me the moment I stepped onto the worn plank floor, stale varnish, anxious perfume, a faint hint of coffee sealed in foam cups. Light slanted through high windows, catching dust that spun like tiny verdicts before fading. Judge Klein, silver-browed and immovable, entered without fanfare. We rose, the room rustling like nervous paper. I avoided Madison's stare and focused on the grain of the counsel table, imagining Dad tracing it with a thoughtful thumb. I'd read Steinbeck to him in that hospital room, chapter after chapter, while Madison texted nurses for updates instead of visiting. I felt the hollow of that chair beside his bed even now. Opposing counsel, Mr. Landon Pierce, offered the jury-less court a polished smile. Your Honor, our petition rests on a single truth. Ms. Emily Harper exploited her father's cognitive decline to secure sole ownership of a treasured family property. He gestured toward me, palm up, as though I were an exhibit. The decedent could not possibly have intended to disinherit the rest of his children. Klein's eyes flicked to Angela and me. Defense? Angela rose. We dispute both premise and conclusion. We submit that Robert Harper drafted a specific safeguard recognizing Emily's consistent support and the other's neglect. We will demonstrate clarity of mind, documented maintenance lapses, and, she paused, recorded statements. Pierce shuffled his notes, lips tightening. The judge nodded. The clerk rolled a monitor to the front. Pierce called Madison as witness. She walked with deliberate poise, navy dress uncreased, voice soft yet resonant. Dad was confused that last year, she said, hands folded. He misplaced words, mixed up dates. Emily took advantage of that confusion. Pierce guided her through anecdotes of erratic decisions, an unmailed birthday card, a doubled grocery order. Each detail tried to chip at Dad's clarity. I steadied my breathing, letting memories line up like calm witnesses of their own, Dad quoting Hemingway without pause, solving the Sunday crossword in pen, teasing me about misplacing my sunglasses, twice, 3 weeks before he died. Angela stood. Ms. Harper, were you present when your father signed the initial trust in 2010? Madison shifted. No. Did you review the annual tax or insurance documents? I trusted Mom to handle it. And when were the property taxes last paid in full? Madison blinked. I'm not sure. No further questions, Angela said, letting the absence of certainty echo. Our turn came. Angela entered the video. On screen, Dad sat on the back porch, blanket tucked, voice steady. If the house sits unloved, he said, let Emily keep it. She's the one who shows up. I watched Judge Klein lean closer, even Pierce's pen paused. Angela played the audio, Madison months earlier, casual, sharp, she should have been easier to control. The words ricocheted across oak panels. Madison's face stiffened, Mom's hand tightened around her purse strap. I stood when Angela signaled. Your Honor, my father was never confused about love or neglect. He left a door for me because he knew which rooms I'd kept lit. My voice stayed low, no tremor. I didn't ask for more. I asked for my piece of remembered light. Pierce objected, argument, not testimony, but Klein allowed it, perhaps sensing the moment's necessity. Minutes later, closing statements concluded. Judge Klein removed his glasses, folded them atop the bench, and spoke with careful weight. The evidence demonstrates a deliberate clause, triggered by documented negligence. Petition for injunction is denied. Title stands with Emily Harper. Gavel. A single thunk that sounded like a final heartbeat. Madison exhaled through her teeth. Mom's gaze dropped to the floor tiles, suddenly fascinated by grout lines. Angela squeezed my elbow. Somewhere, Tracy hooped softly under her breath. Outside, sun flooded the courthouse steps, brighter than I remembered. Reporters clustered, microphones bristling like cattails after rain. One stepped forward. "Ms. Harper, do you have anything you'd like to say to your family?" I stopped, the shell warm in my pocket. Behind me I felt Madison's tension, Mom's stiff composure, the hush of relatives recalibrating. I met the reporter's eyes. Words floated up, sharp, defensive, triumphant, but none fit. Instead I said, "I already did. I just used quieter words." Flashes popped, questions overlapped. I continued down the steps, each one sturdy, sun-soaked, toward a future that, for the first time in years, would carry my full name in its caption. I said what I needed to, they just didn't like the volume. Dad's voice echoed gently in the hush of the house, "You don't need to win the room, Em. Just leave it honest." Early autumn light angled through salt-streaked windows, turning dust motes into drifting gold. The place was mine now, paperwork recorded, keys undisputed, yet I moved as if the walls might startle. First stop, the porch swing. A single screw had loosened over years of uneven laughter. I tightened it, testing the creak. It answered steady, like an old friend clearing its throat. Inside, curtains hung limp and half off their rails, casualties of hurried departures. I rehung them, smoothing the linen until it obeyed the breeze. In the hallway, picture frames tilted, glass clouded with fingerprints. I wiped each pane, straightened every memory, my kindergarten grin, Dad holding a trophy base, even the group photo where I'd been cropped out. I left that one, its empty edge told a truth I no longer needed to hide. A thump sounded from the living room ladder where Tracy balanced with a squeegee. "These windows were one beach storm away from turning opaque," she said, smiling through streaks of sunlight. She wore paint-splattered jeans and a patience that felt like ballast. "You good down there?" "Good up here," I said, holding the frame while she scrubbed. Together we worked in comfortable silence, broken only by gulls and the occasional polite greeting from a neighbor walking the bluff path. News had spread, curious glances lingered, but no one crossed the fence. Maybe they'd read Sarah Cho's article and decided the narrative was closed. In Dad's old study, I found a cardboard box shoved behind the bookcase. Dust puffed as I opened it. Inside, crayon drawings of mermaids with lopsided crowns, a dried seahorse taped to construction paper, and a birthday card Dad had hidden once in my pillowcase. "Don't let the tide tell you where to stand," he'd written. "I love the ground you choose, kiddo." The ink had faded, but the words felt freshly spoken. I pressed the card to my heart and breathed until the ache softened into warmth. Tracy poked her head in. "Everything okay?" I held up a stick-figure doodle of Dad and me sword fighting with fishing poles. "Found proof I've always been dramatic." She laughed. "Frame it. Living room needs more honesty." We spent the afternoon mending, restringing the porch lanterns, oiling hinges, polishing the kitchen's stubborn brass faucet until it caught sunset like a flame. Neither of us mentioned court papers or headlines. There would be follow-up filings, maybe appeals, but those belonged to tomorrow. Today was for the quiet ministry of repair. Near dusk, I dug through the hall closet until my fingers closed on cotton twine and a bundle of seashells, our childhood wind chime, rescued years ago and tucked away. Its blue thread was frayed, but the shell still remembered the ocean. I carried it to the kitchen window, the spot Dad had chosen so Mom could hear it while washing dishes. Tracy held the stool while I climbed. I tied the twine around the rusted hook, tightened the knot twice. As I eased down, the shells clinked, a soft, irregular melody that startled me with its immediacy. A breeze caught them, and they danced, casting scattered rings of reflected light across the ceiling. For a heartbeat, Dad's presence felt whole, as though he'd just stepped onto the porch with a mug of coffee to listen. Tracy glanced up, eyes glassy. "Perfect pitch," she whispered. We stood side by side, watching the shell sway until the horizon traded gold for rose. My body felt lighter, as if every repaired hinge and cleaned pane had subtracted a pound of old sorrow. I turned off lamps room by room, savoring the ritual. Flick, pause, breathe. Shadows stretched but felt friendly, as though the house had exhaled at last. On the porch, the swing nudged my calf. I sat. Wood welcomed me without protest. Tracy settled next to me, offering a bottle of ginger beer. We clinked glass. The sea spread silver and calm, no storm in sight. She took a sip, then asked the question that had hummed beneath every nail driven today. "So what now?" I let the swing rock us gently, eyes tracing the coastline where sky met water. The wind chime answered for me, bright, uncertain, hopeful. I followed its sound to the horizon, where possibilities gathered like distant sails catching an unseen breeze. Sitting on that porch swing, listening to the seashell chimes we once strummed together, I realized I hadn't just reclaimed a house, I'd reclaimed a voice long silenced. Sometimes, families don't mean to hurt you, but silence, like absence, speaks loud. In this life, we don't always get the love we give, but we can still choose grace, dignity, and the courage to stand. If this story stirred something in you, about home, about healing, I'd love to hear what it meant. Feel free to share your thoughts below, or simply sit with it a moment. The wind might tell you something, too.